G'day viewers, how are you? It's Wednesday, and where I often do a video that I call Wangafat Wednesday, which is an acronym that stands for Who am I not giving a fuck about today? Or sometimes What am I not giving a fuck about today? Not today, because I feel compelled to talk about something I seriously give a fuck about. To me, it feels like this is one of the most pressing questions that should be getting addressed in Australian media, and that is, namely, why is Andrew Bolt so aggressively set on defending pedophiles and vilifying the victims of pedophiles? Because it's getting to be a fucking pattern right about now. He famously aggressively defends convicted child rapist, former Archbishop George Pell, one of the most senior Catholics in the world until his disgracing. But now he's decided he's got to protect someone else from a Catholic institution. If you listen to my live streams, and if you don't, why not? You should. The live streams are fun. You should come and join in. But in last night's live stream, I was talking about a few news items of the day with AngryAussie, and it came up a Catholic school in Melbourne called St Kevin's. They were exposed in a Four Corners expose, which is, I suppose, what exposés do. They expose people and events. Basically, they very badly mishandled a case of one of the students who was being groomed by someone who was working at the school. Not only did they not particularly support the student in question, when the person moved on from the school principal wrote him a glowing reference, knowing that he'd been grooming one of the students for sexual activity. And the guy's since been convicted, is now a convicted child sex offender. Bolt chooses to defend the school and the actions of this predator. To go, he was just flirting. He was just coming on to the student. There was no actual sex. Why are we so uptight about someone in a position of authority grooming children for sexual activity? Whatever goes wrong with that? I honestly have trouble wrapping my head around this. To be fair, I have trouble wrapping my head around most of the ridiculous garbage Bolt goes on with. When he's not defending pedophiles, he's being racist or homophobic or misogynist. He's basically always being a piece of shit. But this defending convicted child sex offenders absolutely does my head in. And I know, look, people on the left have been guilty of this sort of thing, lessening the crimes of people that they like. But this is weird. This is guy, he is really aggressively defending convicted pedophiles. And like I said, once is very, very, very bad. And because he's more into protecting the institution of the Catholic Church, like we had a royal commission into child sexual abuse in a variety of institutions, but a lot of it focused on the Catholic Church. And he kept going, witch hunt, nothing to find. What we found was incontrovertible evidence that there was systemic sexual abuse happening in the Catholic Church and Catholic orders, and it was being covered up by those in authority, and the victims were being further victimized by being treated like they were the ones who'd done something wrong. Basically, if there was any other job in the world that had the same percentage of sex offenders as the Catholic Church, you'd shut that shit down. Yet somehow this is not just allowed to continue, but you get people with rather major media platforms very loudly defending the convicted child rapists. And now, like I said, again, I don't know if it's just because it was a Catholic school or more broadly because he thinks it's a conservative institution and he wants to defend conservative institutions. He's going like, oh, the principal did nothing wrong by giving the guy a reference. And the guy didn't even rape the child. He was just grooming the child to make him more vulnerable to rape. So what's the actual problem? How does this person still have a platform? How does anyone, no matter what their political persuasion, no matter what their standing in the world, how do they maintain that position while just going out of their way to really quite aggressively defend pedophiles and vilify the victims of pedophilia? I literally do not understand it. And this, how long can this be allowed to go on? He's going on TV with this other freak, Jared Henderson, and they go like, oh, did anything bad happen? No, nothing bad happened. Oh, it's just a terrible pile-on of the principal. Just because all the principal did was not protect the children under his care and give a glowing reference to the person he knew for a fact was sexually grooming at least one of his students. And then both former students and current and former teachers have made statements that the school has a long history of covering up very untoward behaviour, and it's obviously a systemic problem, and yet criticising them is the wrong thing to do. Well, you know what I say to that? Fuck that. Fuck anyone who wants to defend these pedophiles. Fuck anyone who thinks wanting action taken against the offenders means you're saying all Catholics, all Catholic priests are sex offenders. They're obviously not. That's a ridiculous situation. I grew up in a Catholic environment. I was an altar boy. I went to Catholic school, and so far as I know, there were no sexual, what's the right word? No sexual improprieties. There was no sexual abuse. There was no rape. There was no pedophilia in the area where I grew up. So, hey, when all this started coming out, this was news to me. I didn't grow up thinking this was everywhere. I just came into a realization, based on the findings of a royal commission, that this is an incredibly serious problem, and it's going to stay a problem so long as there are people in these public roles who are more interested in protecting what they regard as institutions that are important to them than they are at looking after people who are abused by those in power. It's sick and it's wrong, and something's got to be done about it.